In this video, we're going to be talking all about how the Plan 3 pension works in the state of Washington. So if you're on the teacher's retirement system, the public employees retirement system, or the school district retirement system, this one's for you. In this video, I'm going to be talking all about how both sides of the plan works. So we're going to cover your defined benefit plan as well as your defined contribution side, so you can finally learn how each side works and what you can expect from these in the future. And if you stick with me to the end of this video, I'll show you some of the downsides to these plans and parts that I'm really not a big fan of, as well as tell you about what you should be doing differently to have a better financial future. My name is Ethan Miko, the co-founder of Scenic Financial, and I specialize in helping school district employees in Washington State build better financial lives. If you want more content like this, please subscribe to my channel and hit that bell to be notified when I post videos every week. So as I mentioned earlier, Plan 3 is a two-part plan. The first one we're going to take a look at is the defined benefit side of things, or the pension side. This side is fully funded by the state of Washington or your employer. The way this works is you're going to get 1% for every single year you work in Washington State. Keep in mind that those years work do have to be on a full-time basis or enough to give you one full service credit. If you're working at a 0.6 or maybe just working part-time, your years earned are going to be at that half or that 0.6 level, so it might take you a few extra years to accrue that full year of working. This plan doesn't actually have any kind of cap on the number of years you can work, so if you want to work 35 years, you're going to get paid on all 35 years, or 35%. If you only work 20 years, you'll get paid 20%. So it's pretty easy to do the math on this plan. Now that percentage is going to be based on the average of your top 5 years of income that are consecutive. So they do have to be in order, but the state will keep track of that and calculate it for you. Now these years of income do include everything above and beyond your base salary. So if you're someone that coaches or has your national board, all that income will also count towards the total income when they do this pension calculation. Now because it's the top 5 years, typically they're going to be your last 5 years of working, but that's not always the case. If you earned more in a previous position prior to that, you're going to get paid obviously for those years. And if you take a part-time or just start working less as you get closer to retirement, you're not going to get dinged for doing that. So it's going to be off your top 5 years of income. This pension here is what they call the full benefit formula, or option 1. If you're single when you go to collect, this is going to be the option you take. If you have a spouse when you transition to retirement, you're probably going to want to take a survivorship option. So if something happens to you, your spouse can still receive a portion of your pension for the rest of their life. So anytime you take one of those survivorship benefits, we're going to get a reduced paycheck. So the formula we see here is probably not what you're going to end up getting. So when can you actually start collecting this pension? The full benefit age is going to be age 62 as long as you have 30 years of service. So as long as you have 30 years of working, you can start drawing your benefit in full at age 62. Now if you don't have 30 years of service, you're going to have to go until age 65. Now that doesn't mean you have to work to those ages. It just means that that's when you can get the benefit in full. If you want to collect earlier than that, you definitely can. However, if you're someone that has less than 30 years, you probably want to hold off because there's a penalty every year you collect it early. And the penalty for people that have less than 30 years is pretty significant. If you're in that first category where you have your 30 years of service, collecting your benefit 1 or 2 years early is a very small reduction. And oftentimes it actually makes sense to collect it early and take that hit. Actually, many of our clients actually do retire at age 60 with 30 years of service and take their pension at that time as well and take that reduced benefit. Why? Because the pension's so little, the break-even's way in their late 80s, and they much rather either be retired or doing something different at this time because they've already been doing this for 30 years. So that's always an option for you as well, as long as you can financially afford it. One note on this is for people that are hired after May 1st, 2013, you do have to work till 65 regardless of the number of years worked. So if you're one of those new hires, it doesn't matter if you work 32 years or 35 years, you have to go to 65 to get your full benefit. There is some pending legislature that's seeking to change that, and if that does pass, I'll be sure to let everybody know. Now, this plan is eligible for a cost of living adjustment, so in retirement, you're going to see an increase somewhere between 0 to 3% of your pension. It's just there to help you keep up with inflation. It's not really going to be much of a raise, so you're not really going to see any more money go into the bank with that. As I mentioned earlier, there are the different survivorship options, and I'll actually have a different video that will cover those in depth, and I'll actually link it up here when it's ready. Now, the second part of Plan 3 is your defined contribution. So this is your side of the plan. This is where your personal contributions go into every single month. So the amount of money you're putting in there is somewhere between 5 to 15%, and it really depends on what you decided to contribute when you signed up for Plan 3. If you didn't sign up for anything and you just got defaulted into Plan 3, you're set to just that minimum of 5%. Now, currently, you're not able to change your contribution rate until you change employers. So as long as you're in your current school district, you're stuck at the contribution rate that you picked. And every single month is just going to go into that investment account, and it's going to rise and fall depending on what the markets do. So it's just like a 401k. Now this one is unique in that it's a non-ERISA, so there's certain unique provisions in here that apply. The first one is this money is absolutely hands off until you separate service. So as long as you're an employee, you can't touch this money for any reason at all, right? So there's no hardships, there's no loans, there's no I hit a certain age, give me some of my money, none of it. As long as you're employed, you cannot touch your money. Even if you're 65 years old, you still can't touch your money until you leave. So it's one of the worst rules about this plan, that most other retirement plans out there would let you have access to this money should you need it. Also, all this money goes in there on a pre-tax basis. So a lot of people hype up the pre-tax saving, and what you do is you're going to get a tax deduction. So if you made $50,000 in a year and you save $5,000 to this plan 3, you're only going to be taxed on $45,000 of income, not the full $50,000, right? So that's one of the benefits, is that pre-tax contribution. Now, as far as where does this money go, if you were working before July 22nd of 2011, you're going to be defaulted into the WSIB, which just stands for Washington State Investment Board, or the TAP fund. And the one thing to know is this fund is aggressive. It's heavy in equities and really private investments. So this fund does well when the market does well, and it does poorly when the market does poorly. For people that start after July of 2011, you actually got put into a target date fund, which is a little more appropriate, because what a target date fund does, it lines you up to when you're going to be age 65, and as you get closer to that age, it's going to automatically adjust your portfolio to include more bonds and fixed income to reduce your level of risk as you get closer. The WSIB does not do that. It is aggressive, maxed out all the way through, and it doesn't change. It doesn't care how old you are, right? So a lot of people find themselves in trouble because they never make this change, and they find themselves in the 60s with this really aggressive portfolio, and everything's really at risk. It's just going to go wrong in the market. So if you're watching this and you're like, man, I'm not sure where my money's at, go ahead and make a login into the DRS account and look where your money is. And if you are in that WSIB fund, I'd encourage you to get out of it, and you're going to want to move into this thing called self-directed. And now it may sound scary because you're directing your own investments, and all you're really doing is saying, I don't want to be in the WSIB anymore, put me somewhere else. There are 7 different funds available, plus the targeted funds I mentioned earlier. You can choose any one of those. Now the people on the phone there aren't licensed giving kind of advice, so you're going to have some kind of a game plan before you call them, but it's really not too hard to choose the different funds, and chances are you're probably going to be better off no matter what you pick by making that switch. If you do want more help on deciding what funds you should select, that's something you need to talk to your advisor about, and if they have no idea or you don't have an advisor, then just let us know. We'll be happy to help you guys as well. That's how that defined contribution plan works in Plan 3. Now the drawdowns of this plan is you're only going to get 1% a year, whereas people in Plan 2 got that 2% guaranteed. So really the purpose of this defined contribution is to hopefully have enough investments built up that you can draw income off of, and it should match up to what people would have on that Plan 2 system. Oftentimes it's not going to be the case, especially if people control their investments and the markets really don't work out. So one of the reasons why I really don't like this plan is for that reason, is that it's just not as certain as Plan 2. Second is that contribution rate is locked in. So if you're someone, newly hired and able to save, say, 10 or 15%, and you get locked into that, and then suddenly a few years later you find yourself married with kids, and it might be a little bit tight to keep making that contribution payment each and every month. That lack of flexibility is something else I'm not a big fan of. And the third thing I really don't like is those pre-tax contributions. It may sound nice on paper, however, if you really do the math on it, pre-tax contributions often end up making the IRS more money than it does you. And I have a whole video coming out on that as well. I'll link that up here. If you found some value in this video, then go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below on what you guys thought. Please share it with a friend to help spread this information to them. In the description below, there's a link to my free masterclass where I go more in depth on how these pension plans work and on those tax situations and how to really build a tax-free retirement as a state of Washington employee. I want to learn more about what other options I can save into to build a tax-free retirement that might be a better alternative than this Plan 3. Then go ahead and check out this video over here. And remember that your future depends on what you do today.